But let me at least put you the concepts and then the users. So the base concept is that cities are for citizens, and that's, of course, Lapali's truth. But many cities are sensing a lot of things in the city. You know, vehicles, roads, cameras, noise, temperature. But they are not actually sensing the citizens. They are not using the citizens as sensors. So what we have been trying to do here in Porto is apparently a new concept, which is put citizens as sensors. That's what we are doing. So I think I could stop here and say this is what we're doing and now jump to the results. But let me elaborate a little bit more. How do we do it? Well, citizens are you, me, etc. Of course, we didn't went for now to citizens like normal people, but we went to special citizens in this case. So we used the third test bed, so Sense My City, and to the Sense My City, as Anna beautifully showed, is based on what we call mobile crowd sensing. But what we did is we give a step further, and basically we introduced the concept of vital crowd sensing, which is mobile crowd sensing, but then we are adding the quantified self concept. The quantified self concept is emerging now. If you go to an app store, if we went to App Store maybe 2 or 3 years ago, you would find 1, 2, 3 small gadgets for monitoring yourself, like a Fitbit was one of the firsts. But if you go sometime later, it's an enormous amount of them, and they are growing. You know, every week there is a new gadget for quantified self, so for using these wearable devices so that you know yourself better, and by knowing yourself better, you try to live a life and actually manage better your sports, your mood, etc. A lot of them, as I told you, are wearable, and they are emerging enormous amounts of these gadgets. And I usually start asking this question: is wearable a novelty? Look at this. 1949. Here is an AM radio in a casket or in a hat. So this was how in the 40s and 50s you would see wearable technology, and like this. So like I think this is a very nice comparison. So that's nothing new. Well, quantified self, what they call self-knowledge through numbers, is actually an emerging area. As a lot of groups that is making this concept, more and more people using it, and we have already one in Porto. So you are invited to these sessions that we have every 3 months at FILP. This is growing very fast. And for example, Fitbit, I can tell you that Fitbit went into an IPO, and its valuation was $4 billion. So that was interesting. For an accelerometer that you put on your wrist and an app, that's great. Okay, so this is the concept that we are exploring, vital crowd sensing. We did it on the infrastructure. Basically, what we installed is we had to the infrastructure what we call the Sense My Heart. So you could have users that had the Sense My Heart application, and they were monitored using an electrocardiogram monitor. And with this information, you could relay it to the cloud and get data out of your inner physiology. And with that, we could detect things like levels of stress, activity, etc. So how do you do that? How do we do that? I'm not going to lose too much time, but we are measuring the wave, so we can take parameters of the wave, but we also can take distances between the pulses, and this is what we call heart rate variability, which is a measure that we can use for fatigue and stress. We started to monitor. So in this case, bus drivers. So bus drivers, they actually have at their when they are driving, they have other people in the vehicle. In this case, this is a real case of a bus driver that has a stroke, so a heart attack. And we are seeing these images and all this, and because this kid was a neuro and actually could stop the bus on time before it went into a tree, and now he's doing CPR. So we thought this would be inspiring, and we tried to then start monitoring drivers. In this case, it's a trip where we found a peak on the heart rate, on the variation of the heart rate in a specific place that everyone knows. So this is Ponto Freixo, where the velocity is the height and the color is the heart rate. So you can see that something happened here and the heart rate went up very fast. And here, before, it was actually much lower. And so this is the type of events that we can actually collect and geolocate and use these type of events to monitor drivers. So how do we did it? So, and I was already showing a little bit of this. So we put the driver with a specific ECG monitor and collected also GPS at the same time, and also a push button for the event so that you could mark where some events that would induce stress would appear. And then at the end of the day, we would show them a map where we found alterations physiologically. So this is a route of a bus. And then he would be invited to describe, to recall what happened in that specific place. He could say nothing happened, or he could recall something that happened. And here what you see is, of course, bus stops and then acceleration, and then there was something here, a vehicle blocking the road. So jumping to results, we collected 130 hours, around 2,500 kilometers of Q self-driving, as we are now calling this. Among the events, so we had the tagged events, the one you push the buttons, not many, the recalled, so at the end of the day, and the other events that we detected, but they say there's nothing there. And this is one of the measures of heart rate variability that we use to measure stress. And you could see that the recalled events had a higher alteration, physiological alteration, than the tagged ones, and they were also higher than the other ones, which he doesn't remember. So actually, these type of events, even if they don't mark it, they stay in memory, and we can recall it at the end, and they are actually the ones that apparently are inducing higher stress to these citizens, in this case, in the buses. And the famous map that Anna showed a little bit ago with some more details. So you have, based on this data, you have the areas where these measures of stress were higher or lower. And then here, what you have is the type of events that they reported, that they recalled, or that they tagged from social interactions, like, for example, someone with bad figure, or, these guys in certain neighbors that get into and don't want to pay the ticket. That's a social interaction, but also other things like unexpected factors, etc., that you can see here. Time schedule was also a lot of times, they were delayed, so they were being, called to go faster. Then we also applied this to firefighters. We had to change the garment because firefighters need specific textile characteristics. I will not go on into that, but we also put temperature on this. So this is the result. And we had also some GPS and ambient sensors for temperature, ambient temperature, humidity, also carbon monoxide. It's important when they go to fires, and also nitrogen dioxide. And this is not new, as you may understand. And these were the first results before this project. So there were alterations compared to the type of services. For example, fire or accident, they had changes in the heart rate variability. So this was the data we had before we came into this project. And in this project, we got some more data. And what we found was that not based on variability, but on the shape of the wave, some specific characteristics of the shape, we could actually be more specific and separate accidents there from pre-hospital assistance, from services, general services of being in communication officer in the barracks. So this shows that we can be much more precise in the physiology by using the heart wave and not just the variability, which we had before. Finally, and the third type of users is a project that used police officers here from Porto. 7 police officers. We recorded 95 hours. Part of them on duty and part of them off duty, so that we could make a comparison between how is the variability, how is the stress levels and the fatigue before and off and on duty. So these were the types of events that we could detect. In this case, we are using 2 measures, LF over HF and another measure. It's not important for here, so we could actually detect events. But more importantly is that we took all these data and we compared for the 6, in this case, we drop out one of the participants. For the 6 policemen, we put them in on shift and off shift. And we compare the measures of stress through these two types of activities. And the results were quite interesting, and I will ask Commandant Leitão to comment this, because I think this is you know much more about this than me. Anyway, just to explain the picture, if it's lower this line, more or less, the literature say that you are actually with no stress, you are relaxed. If it's over, you are stressed, which is not bad, because if stress is good as long as it's not continuous, as long as it's not pathological, but also you can discuss that more with Cristina. But we could find different patterns of officers, and I think Commandant Leitão can also comment on that in a minute. So this was basically what we have been doing until now with 3 types of users, and we are working to Porto, so to make it towards a sensed and sensible city. That's what we have been doing. I will pass the word now to Commandant Leitão to comment on these results.
Obrigado.